Hey folks, I forgot to show this yesterday after I fixed all the solenoids for four-wheel drive, but I'm now doing a timing belt kit. And if you've never done one of these, this can seem quite daunting, but I wanted to give you an example of the simplicity of it, really. And that is, if I take the manual from Mitsubishi. So if I take the manual from Mitsubishi and take out the pages which are relevant, if you leave all the steps required, it's actually not that much. I know this might seem daunting, but really, it's actually not that bad. You know, so here's the tension is laid out, and you know how to actually get your tensioner installed, and how to retension the wires and everything. And then I've actually got some extra pages here just on replacing the front oil seal, because I'll be doing that as well. Removing the cooling fan, because that was a prerequisite. Removing the thermostat, because I think that's also a prerequisite. And water pump, because I'm changing the water pump. It's actually quite simple. Mitsubishi's pretty good here. They give you the pre-removal operations of what you actually need to do. Anyway, so I've done most of it. It's not bad. The hardest part, I think, you know, with this compared to the motor in my VR4, is that there's a massive plate you have to remove. This thing here. This is like the plate that goes on the front of the engine. Water pump's behind that bit there, and these are all it's like the bracketry for everything else. So the air conditioning compressor mounts to that bracket there. That's bolted to this. The alternator is bolted to this. The power steering pump is bolted to it. The good part is, like most other cars that I've worked on, you can easily just take the things which can't be unhooked and put them to the side. And a classic example of that is your air conditioning compressor, right? You down there, that thing in the middle. You really don't want to actually be venting air conditioning gases to the world, because it's money. They're not cheap anymore. So you just sort of push it to the side, and it gives you enough clearance. What I was trying to diagnose is whether my massive oil leak is coming from this front camshaft. What I discovered, that you might have seen in the previous videos, there's oil everywhere, that the actual rocker covers don't appear to be weeping, at least not on the front or the back. Obviously I can't show you the back, but I've reached around and felt back here, all the way back there. It's kind of hard to see. What does appear to be happening though is that the oil is, look at that, you can see that dot right there, look at that. Oh, that's not really on camera. There you go. All the way down there. That is fresh leaking oil. And where would that come from if it's not coming from the rocker cover? It's got to be coming from the front cam seal. And if you kind of look in there, let's see if I can give you some focus. Maybe if I zoom in, focus on that. It looks very wet, doesn't it? The one thing I can't see from standing up here, and I'll just see if I can touch the screen, cause it to focus on that. If you can see if there's a lot of oil coming out of that, and the angle I'm looking at the screen does look like it. I'll run my finger over that. Hold on. Let me just zoom back out. Yep. Look at that. That is fresh oil. So yes, it is the cam seals, and thankfully my timing kit, somewhere in one of these boxes is all my here. Note there are 3 oil seals in here, 2 for the cam, 1 for the crank snout. Sorry, 1 for the front main seal. What is hard about this job is they just say, I gotta love this. I was gonna show you this. Timing belt. Where are we? Oh yeah. Remove the crankshaft pulley. Number 8. And this bolt here. Look at the 188 Newton meters. That's to get it on. And I've tried to get it off by holding it with my cam sprocket holder, which is now bent. So that didn't work. Because normally I'm going to bring out either my Ingersoll Rand air impact or my not with this socket on it, of course, but my big ass AEG, 1500 Newton meter nut busting torque, blah 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 gun. Now I can tell you right now, even with that radiator removed, this gun ain't gonna fit. Well, actually it might, because I'll get there might be some clearance between the radiator and the condenser for the AC, so I can get the gun in. That's actually quite large. It's also not actually as powerful, I have found, as my Ingersoll Rand air impact. Let's just compare the sizes of these. So let me just get that right about on top. Look how much shorter that is. You can't really see that from that angle, but there. It's about an inch shorter. This Ingersoll Rand 2235, this gets fucking anything off. And I was curious about that, even with the good battery in this. I can thoroughly recommend going to the Torque Test channel on YouTube, and they've got a video on how the air hammer impact mechanism works in these things, and the way it works in the electronic impacts. And here's another one. This is a smaller one. This is only 300 Newton meters. Here's my stubby, which is just a Blackridge, I think. Just a cheapie, but so this guy has as much power as that guy, and look at the size difference. And apparently the reason is the electric ones spin really fast and hit a smaller hammer but faster, whereas the air ones, or good air hammers, spin a lot slower, but they have like two hammers in them. What's the Torque Test channel? So I'm going to try and use that guy, and then this guy. If that guy fits, I don't think he'll fit, but so let's have a look to see if the Ingersoll Rand's going to fit, because this is it, right? I suppose the point I'm making here is, before you pull something apart massively, make sure the bolts come out. Especially the really tight ones. Especially if you're short on time. I'm not. This is a spare car. I've got fucking my wife's car. I've got the old NH over there, which is still here. The Legnum, which is my daily. I've got a bloody motorbike as well. I'm a nut job. But if you look at this guy, he looks like, you look at that. If I get that AC out of the way, he might fit. Right? Hopefully he'll fit. Because if it doesn't, you have the fun method of removing it. So let's talk about the fun method. Where did I put all my tools? Oh, here they are. The fun method, and I've done this and it does work. The fun method of getting your crank pulley out is you get your socket that fits, right? You put it on this guy, you stick him in there, and you jam that guy against the ground. Basically, poor example, if I can get it to line up, just so it sort of sits there for demonstration purposes, like so. All right, so let me just put that there. What happens is, if you look down, you've got that braced against the floor. You make sure, on the Pajero at least, you disconnect. Well, it's going to piss water out of this one, so drain the block as well, or expect a bunch of water to get pumped out, which might not be an issue because you're going to clean up anyway. Disconnect your crank and cam sensors. So these are both 3-wire sensors. Actually, one's a 2-wire. Interesting. No, they're both 3, sorry. That's crank. This is cam, I'm pretty sure. Let me just have a look at the colours down there. Yeah, that's the cam sensor, so it's blue. You unplug both of these, there'll be no spark and no fuel. So once you've done that, unplug those two. Get in the car, make sure there's nothing, make sure everything's solid, make sure your socket's really, really nicely square on that bolt and is nice and tight. It's not going to easily fall off, right? And that your extension bar wouldn't look like this. That'd be bad, right? You want it to be like nice and straight. Then hit the starter with the key in the car. What will usually happen is the strength of the starter motor will break that bolt free. And you might ask, why does it do that? Well, the answer is that you think about the starter motor, which I don't think is on this side on this car. Doesn't really matter if I'm looking at the starter motor. But if you think about it, the starter motor is on a massive ring gear on the back of the flex plate or flywheel if it's a manual. So the mechanical advantage that the starter motor has to turn the motor over is massive. And it's also high torque because it's obviously having to defeat the compression of the engine. So yeah, the torque of the starter motor, on a good battery of course, is generally enough to break that bastard free. And so you may hear like a bang, and then the extension bar might fall off, but come back here, you'll probably find that's loose. So look, I could do that. I could just fucking do that right now. But I will try and use the gun. It's not a big deal for me to get the radiator out right now. It's literally just got to pinch off the transcooler lines, or let them leak out a bit, pinch them off, put a bolt on the end of them, whatever. And then I can just undo the mounting bolts of the rad and just slide the rad out and give me the clearance I want. So yeah, we'll get round to that. Come back once I'm round to that. Well, the bad news is my big one doesn't fit, even with the radiator out. Here goes nothing. Nope. That's a no. Well, this is going to suck. We're going to have to use the shitty method. Bugger. Well, this is it. As you can see, got the breaker bar on there. As square as I can get it. It's not exactly square, but it's pretty close. I need to turn off the gas so the gas doesn't kick in. I have unplugged the... Oh, there's no battery in it. Alright, round two. I've got a battery in it. Carefully got the... This guy has to be not touching ground because that will blow your 140 amp fuse if that touches anywhere on earth. Disconnected the cam and crank sensors. Got a battery in it. This will spew out some coolant, I think. But let's give it a shot. Other thing I need to do here is make sure the gas is off. Yep. See, it's on petrol only. It's that little red light down there, if you can see it. Petrol only. All right, turn it off again for your benefit. Oh, I forgot to add, make sure your ground strap's connected. It looks like the main ground strap for the engine is, yeah, see that there, and that bolt? I've just got it touching on that bolt. That looks like the main ground strap, so make sure your ground strap's there, otherwise it'll try and crank the starter motor through whatever ground it has between the motor and the chassis, which might be some really piss-weak wire, and you'll get no current, and it may not turn over at all. So yeah, make sure your ground strap's connected somehow as well. All right, this is it. Here we go. Just going to visually recheck everything. Looks like we're good. Nothing seemed to move. I think we got it. Let's have a look. Yep. She's off. Let's just make sure we didn't break the bolt. That would be super embarrassing. Let me just get my ratchet. All right, Okay. Yeah, we got it. It's amazing how much torque that starter motor has, and I didn't even spray any water anywhere. Oh, because I must have been lower than the level of the water pump when I drained all the fluid out of it. Let's keep a nice close eye on this bolt. It feels pretty good. Let's have a look. I think it's hand tight now. Is the bolt broken? Nope, looks good. The washer fell in there. Oh, it's a big bastard too. Might take 2 hands to get that washer out. Oh no, there we go. There you go, folks. That's the hard way. Just realised I forgot to video me removing the harmonic balancer. It is a press fit, but a very gentle one. So look at this. This is a piss weak $10 cheapy puller, right? And I wouldn't normally want to put a lot of pressure on these because this is a 2-piece balancer. It's held together by rubber from the inner and outer ring, right? But it's coming off so easy. If it was really high torque, I wouldn't, but you can see it's coming off. If you look at that, you'll see it moving very slowly. Yeah, it's just a press fit. You can just bang that back on with a rubber mallet when you're reinstalling it. Well, folks, I just spent the last half an hour getting this fucker off. Even with my puller, what was happening is I was pulling the bloody... Look at this. I'm going to have to clean them up because I had to use a screwdriver to lever the bloody harmonic balancer off the sprocket. It's ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Always use anti-seize, folks. It's 2 seconds of your time. Just think of the next guy, please. All right, everything's off, and I got the sprocket off for this side, and we wondered where the oil leg was. Yep, look at that. I'll get something small I can poke it with, like my screwdriver. Wherever the screwdriver is. Hell, even a pencil. Look at that. Yep, that is the source of the massive oil leak. That cam seal. Hey folks, just overlaying some audio here. This is a repeat of an earlier video I uploaded, which was just about the fact that the cam seals are installed incorrectly. So if you've already watched that, you can probably stop watching this video here. The other thing I'd like to say is, I don't think you're supposed to drive those seals in that far. Like if I recall on the NH 3-litre heads, which are also single overhead cam, if you drive these seals in too far, they'll just pop right through completely. And in fact, I can't even get my cam seal removal tool under that because it's too far in. That one's leaking as well. I think the last knucklehead who did this almost 100,000 Ks ago pushed him in too far. What a noob. Right, so getting back where we left off, I've put the new cam seals in. But yeah, so I've cleaned up all this. This was all covered in oil. And the issue was that 80,000 Ks and almost 10 years ago, the previous mechanic put these cam oil seals almost through completely into the head. And that's not correct. They don't have a stop, right? The crankshaft oil seal, which is behind there, I put it in now, does have a stop, but these don't. You just got to put them till they're flush. In fact, that one needs to be knocked in a bit. It's actually not completely flush all the way around. I'll have to fix that, but that one's all right. I have fixed that one. Yeah, and if you push them in too far, what basically happens is you get to the point where there's an oil gallery in outlet just behind here, and the oil just comes pissing out. So yeah, that's been that way for a long time, which explains why everything in here was just so juicy. We're talking about, well, look at that. We're talking like almost 10 years worth of oil. He kept that from me when he sold it to me. Oh, it doesn't leak a drop of oil, he said. Yeah, no. I think part of the reason you sold it was you got a quote how much to fix this and fix the cam oil seals, and you went, no, I'll sell it. Oh well. So, timing belts installed. The instructions for this are fairly simple. what you've just got to make sure is you see that little white cutout there, right at the back. I'm not sure if I can zoom into that. That little cutout there, and there's a little like lumpy clip looking thing right there on the block. Those two are your TDC mark for the crank. Right, so as I'm zooming out, and here's your TDC mark for the sprocket on the right, cam sprocket, and the same for the left. Now this one will line up easily. The trick is put this on, put a little like a bulldog clip over it, or even any kind of clamp to hold the belt on. Excuse me. And then you want to make it so that this run here is tight, right? Tightish. So if you need to back off this a little to make it even when it's loose, so it grabs the teeth, and then when you move it back it goes tight, that's cool, that's fine. Just make sure that when you're done there, this is lined up. Now the hard part's going to be getting this sprocket on. And I say that, excuse my snuffling again, because when you're at TDC, this cam sprocket, it will fall rapidly that way or that way, even a bee's dick left or right of that alignment mark. So you've got to get that right on, like right on, and it'll sit there. And you don't disturb it, because if you knock it, it might flick back off the spring tension, right, from the valve springs. So you hold it there, and then you make sure this is not installed. Make sure your tension is not currently installed. This will give you a lot of movement here. That'll give you enough clearance to get the belt, you know, under the water pump over this and slip it onto that sprocket. And as long as this part here has some tension when that sprocket's in alignment, right, as long as this part of the belt is not flopping around, when that's lined up, you're golden, because this is your adjustment here, right? Your adjustment is on this part of the belt. And so then you can put your tensioner in, making sure the pin's in, and then you use those two dots there with the special tool whilst this bolt is loose. Don't make sure you haven't touched this at all. You don't need to remove this bolt at all. Don't touch it. Just leave it. This is your pivot bolt for the whole assembly here, right? So if you don't have that tool that you use to hold this, and what it says in the manual, it'll say use the special tool and with this little thing, and then you adjust it with a beam-based torsion. It has to be 4.4 Newton meters of tension, and you tighten it. Okay, I have one of those tools. Guess what? Cannot find it for the life of me. I went everywhere. It's a tiny little thing with a 1/4 inch socket adapter on it. Could not find it. It's tiny little black piece of metal. Had it for years. It's gone. Obviously, the one special tool I need. So what I did instead was, hold on. Look, I just grabbed it with a pair of, circlip pliers in those holes, right, and just turned it till I felt it had what I felt was the right tension. And then while holding it there, I zipped this up with a low torque impact so it would hold, right? And then I just basically held these in place while I tightened it for the rest of the way. Now, you might go, oh yeah, but the 4.4 Newton meters. What's actually important is not so much the 4.4 Newton meters, but what you're looking for is the correct measurement on the hydraulic rod. That this is a hydraulic rod which pushes against that tensioner, right? So this is what's holding belt tension. Now, what they say is you pull the pin out after you've tightened this bolt, then you rotate the crank two full rotations, which gets you right back to where you started, right? So you get right back to where that's lined up and the sprocket marks are lined up. Then you wait 5 minutes and you measure this gap. And I'm going to measure that now. Let's see if we can do this on camera. And the measurement is 4.27 millimeters. And it says the standard acceptable deflection is 3.8 to 5, and we're right in the middle. So basically, what would happen is if you had put too much tension on this and just leave it at that way too far, then after waiting 5 minutes, after doing 2 slow rotations of the crank with a like a socket and a ratchet, right, that if this was out too far, or in too far, you had, and for a brand new tensioner, right, you got it wrong. So as long as you're in the ballpark of the acceptable measurements, you're okay, because basically the tension being applied against this tensioner, based on the amount you have rotated this tensioner pulley, is within spec, because it's between 3.8 and 5. So that's the most important thing. Not many people will have that special tool, and not many people are going to have a beam torque wrench that does 4 Newton meters. I've got a little tiny clicker one, little tiny thing here. Whoa, sun's in my eyes. But again, you need the tool, and it's a 1/4 inch adapter, but I don't have it. I lost it. So yeah, that's good enough. Now what I do is hold these a bit more and put enough, a bit more tension, a bit more torque on this to make sure it's zipped up. And I believe it's 48 Newton meters of torque. Yeah, see? 48 Newton meters. So I'll get that done now. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to see what stupid looks like? I should turn the camera around, because then you'd know. So I've got the new timing belt on. Oh, don't do that, Ed. And it's all working. Everything's engine runs. However, that is the second timing belt I've installed. So a couple of days ago, I called someone a noob for pushing camshaft seals all the way into the head. And then, because I've got the flu and I just can't sit down all day because it's driving me nuts and I have to work on the car, yeah, you see that crank position sensor there? That's not the original one. So basically, I removed that to check on it because of, I think I had to remove it because I was changing the oil seal, but I was checking to see if it was covered in oil. When I reinstalled it, I apparently didn't tighten the bolts at all. And that's what's left of I cut it off, but that's what's left of it. Started the car, it ran, I heard like a shing, shing, shing sound. Also, didn't put the radiator back in, so I pissed a bunch of transmission fluid on the floor. No biggie, I'm going to change that anyway. And it also did this to the belt. Where is it? It's on here somewhere. There it is. And I've just dropped it again. Here we go. Yep. So, I can't believe I'm admitting I did this, but basically what happened was this was loose, popped out, the timing teeth collected it, ripped it off the bolts because the bolts were loose. It just ripped this off the bolts, but there's actually like a little steel grommet in there. The grommet flipped around and punched a hole in the belt, actually wedged itself in the belt. Believe it or not, the engine held time, even though it basically pushed the belt off the crank pulley briefly until it hammered that piece of metal into it. Did not damage any of the teeth and the sprockets. You know, I could easily say I would never normally make this mistake, and it's all because I'm sick. But I'm also in a bit of a rush because I've got to get this car to the roadworthy on next Wednesday. So, and I wouldn't normally work on things while I'm sick. But, I kind of class working on cars as an easy, non-mental exercise, whereas my job is all brain, and I just can't even put two words together when it comes to my job. But yeah, that cost me an extra $130 for the belt. And luckily I had a spare crank sensor from a Legnum, which is the same Mitsubishi part, right? Mitsubishi part's been special, but I got very lucky, guys. That could have cut the belt, lost time, smacked the valves, you name it. So, yeah, take care, everyone. Don't rush. Don't do what I did. Laugh at me, if you will, in the comments. I mean, I'm willing to post it, therefore I'm willing to cop the comments, I suppose.